Who's sitting at the table for this? The Sumner Road. Can we do it sooner? Has anyone got? Well, I mean, I guess I'm being a bit flippant, and I should, sort of my personal interest in this as a husband that likes cycling in this area. I think councillors are also in that position, particularly this road. But I know that it's core critical to the port, and it is the redundancy, as it were, in terms of alternative access to the port, and we're very keen to see it happen. And I guess it's a significant report that we've been given here in terms of assessing risk from rockfall and the work that's been done in that area. But can it be done any sooner than this? Because it's just such a core critical road.
So, Madam Mayor, firstly, my apologies for taking the agenda from page 5 to page 303.
That's all right. That's all right.
Introduce myself. Yes, Paul
It's
Burton,
got a lot
Road
of
Corridor
pictures,
Operations
so I'm
Manager.
forgiving you.
Can it be done sooner? Well, the gateway that we need to pass, well, there's two critical gateways. One was actually getting it through council, obviously, and the next critical gateway is the consenting. And it's the consenting that has the potential to slow things down if things don't go
How
away.
long?
Well, the consenting process, we believe, if the council decides to process this under the order in council, which is what our preliminary advice would suggest, then that would speed things up quite considerably.
Yeah.
If we have to go through a normal notified consent process, then we can't put a definite time frame. It would depend on the submissions and how vigorously anyone who was opposed to the proposal wanted to pursue their cause. It could end up in the Environment Court. So the critical gateway is around consenting. Things become very much streamlined if we are able to use the order in council process.
So, but is that the order in council process, or is that the...
We have assumed the best case.
Right,
Yep.
so that's the order in council.
Yep. Correct.
So when do we sign off on that? Or when does that proposal come up?
Once we have your recommendation to council, once council endorses those 6.1 and 6.2, hopefully,
Yep.
then we're just about ready to go with the lodging of that consent application.
Great. Well, I'd be really happy to move it because I want to see this open as quickly as possible. Paul Lonsdale, second. Question, Yanni?
So just several questions. One is, have the fuel companies that came and talked to the council probably 2 years ago been involved in this? Are they happy with the response, and will their trucks use this road if these proposed works happen?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the fuel companies have been involved indirectly through our discussions with LPC, with the port company. So the fuel companies are very comfortable with the proposed option that we have in front of us, whereas when we originally were talking to them, the option was not as significant in terms of rock remediation as the one we have now. So both the oil companies and LPC are extremely comfortable with where we are at this point in time.
And we've worked alongside and included the port company in our working group discussions.
Right.
So this will obviously have an impact on other areas like Sumner, for example, with heavy vehicles going through Wakefield Ave. What's the time frame for getting some of those other projects? You know, there's 4 projects: Marlboy Cave, Shagrock Reserve, Wakefield Ave. How does this tie into the work that's happening there in terms of budget and in terms of time frame?
Yep, I'm Lynn Armitage. I'm the project manager that's looking after this corridor work. We're looking at the corridor as a whole, but needing to get started on Sumner Road first because it's actually closed. We're currently working on the investigations around Wakefield, Shagrock Reserve, or some people call that Peacock's Gallop, and Marrowbone, with a view to getting rid of those shipping containers and getting back to our pre-quake level of service. At this point in time, we're trying to develop a program that pushes that program of work through very quickly, with a view to being free of those containers and things in the year 17. Our top 2017. Our top priority will be anywhere where we've got a compromised level of service. For example, through Peacock's Gallop, there's some nasty pinch points at the corner. So those would be, quite a high priority for us to deal with those first.
But what's your current budget expectation?
No, so this, all of Sumner Road and the rest of the corridor is part of the infrastructure rebuild overall sum programme. So actually we've allowance within that programme to deal with the whole corridor.
So 40 million goes towards one, we've got 100 million, we've got 3 others to do.
Correct.
For 60 million.
Yeah.
Correct.
Doesn't quite seem enough.
That's enough.
Oh, we're working through it and we hopefully will be enough.
And just the final question was, the local community boards, why haven't they been involved as a stakeholder, or have they?
They will be in the next phase. We wanted to update the elected members before we went to the community boards.
So you've got the port in the stakeholders list. There's not even a mention of the community boards. So is it possible perhaps to add them as a stakeholder? And I'm just concerned because if you get adverse reaction to some of the environmental effects from the community boards, that obviously has the risk to delay things. So, I would have thought this report prior to coming to council needs to go through the community boards. Is there any reason why that couldn't happen?
There's no reason why that, through you, Madam, there's no reason why that can't happen. In fact, two things. One is we're in a program of keeping community boards, the 2 community boards that are involved directly in this, up to speed right up until we got to our final negotiations around the preferred option. So there is a bit of closing the loop to do with respect to community boards in terms of bringing them up to where we are now. So it's a chicken and egg thing. I mean, we had the briefing with the Mayor and Councillor Lonsdale. It was decided that it needed to come here. So that's where we brought it. But like you say, it is important that we close that loop and keep the community boards in the loop around where things are at.
And just in conclusion then, that 4.33, are we simply telling people what we're doing, or are we actually giving people an opportunity to give feedback on the proposal in terms of things like design, etc.? So is there going to be genuine public consultation or engagement, or is it just a case of telling them what we're doing?
Well, I think if you look at the public consultation or public participation spectrum, we are somewhere between inform and consult. There are some things that are givens or removables that are intrinsic to what we need to do to progress, but there are other things in which people can have some valued input into, and we may decide to what degree we take those comments on board and incorporate them into the design. So that's kind of where it's sitting in the spectrum.
Andrew?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, if I may. The pictures on page 302, for the impression of what the finished project will look like. I look at this through the eyes of a person who might be sitting in Diamond Harbour or Porau. Has any investigation been undertaken as to whether that area could be planted at some stage? So where the benching happens, would it be possible for there to be any planting on that to soften the appearance?
Our landscape and ecology team have worked closely together, developing the consent application, which is coming together. The subject of planting the benches has been discussed at length. It's very difficult to plant those successfully because it really is hard, bare rock that we're revealing rather than a lower soil arrangement. Also, we need to keep the benches clear because there is routine maintenance where large vehicles, drive along and literally, push any rock debris off those benches, which would damage the planting. Every effort would be made to not make those benches look too sharp, so leave them with a natural appearance. But over time, lichens and things will grow back on, and that's the sort of vegetation that's on the bluffs at the moment.
Yep,
lichen,
right.
for example.
Thank you for that. And my second question is around certainty with the budget for this project? Like, obviously, there's a lot of investigative work been done. A project of this size, you know, there could be all sorts of things we find as we get underway, and I'm guessing there'll be more investigation done before we actually start construction. What level of confidence can we have in project budgets?
Well, at the moment, we're doing some intrusive investigation in the form of core drilling up at the top of the bluffs. That will give us a lot more information about the rock formation itself and the method that we can use to form the benches. At the end of the drilling exercise, which is expected to be in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be pulling that information together and revising the engineer's cost estimate for the works. So as we refine the scope, we'll be refining the cost estimate, and then that will have to move through the horizontal infrastructure process in terms of approving the actual scope.
Can I add that there's still a whole process around this project, because it's part of the infrastructure rebuild, effectively with 3 clients there. So actually we've got to get the other 2 clients, Sarah and NZTA, alongside us and working with us. And particularly with NZTA, there's a whole process around applications for funding, and they talk about value for money and all of these type of things. So there's a whole host of processes that we need to work through in parallel with delivering this project. So you know, we need to understand what those costs, because that will drive our application for funding through the infrastructure rebuild program.
David?
Thank you. Since the earthquakes back in February 2011, has there been any sort of quantitative analysis of any further rockfall since the earthquakes, or?
It's been some, isn't it?
We haven't measured any volumes, but we've observed significant rockfall, particularly in June. The June quake was devastating for that area.
During, sorry?
The June 13th
Oh, June
earthquake.
13.
Yeah.
But
That's
since,
when the time ball
since that
came down.
period, the earthquakes have substantively declined. Are there any ongoing rockfalls?
Yes,
Yeah.
there are.
Yeah. The cliffs above are very unstable.
So I suppose my question really sort of comes down to you know, if we're doing some benching and other protective works, which I'm supportive of, are we any safer driving on this road than driving on Porters Pass, Arthur's Pass, the Milford Road, Haas Pass, all of those sort of... there's still going to be an element of risk, and to what degree are we going to actually try and mitigate?
Well, perhaps I can answer that. The brief or the scope of the project is to return the road to the same or similar level of resilience as it was prior to the earthquakes. We will achieve that over 2/3 of the section of Sumner Road, 1/3 of the section involving slightly less than that, the Crater Rim Bluffs, which is the area where the
Area
beaching
3B.
That's right. That area will inadvertently achieve a higher level of resilience, simply because that is the only practicable option for us to deal with the substantial amount of rockfall in that area, or potential rockfall in that area. So every effort's been made to get the route back down to a risk level which is tolerable and similar to that which was there prior to the earthquakes.
Paul?
First of all, I just want to congratulate staff. This is a fabulous report, and I think not only is it critical for the ongoing commerciality of the port, but it's also a lifeline for 2 communities which could be stranded. But I just want to go back to the environmental aspects, and I was privy to a briefing which I think other members were invited to, but looking at what's the benching there, even though you can't plant it, is it fair to say that over time that look will actually mould into the landscape, so it'll change colour? And
It will weather. Yeah. It'll weather over time, and as we've said, normal sort of species of plants will start to accumulate.
And the benching, by the look of it, actually fits into the contours of what is existing there at the moment.
That's right.
That's what it's designed to do.
Excellent. Glenn?
Thank you. Obviously very keen to get this open as soon as possible, but this is slightly related to David's question. The actual life risk calculation of 1 in 10,000, which is based on motor vehicle travel, will that change here? You talked about a tolerable level, but will it be above or below what that actual specific measure is, 1 in 10,000?
Do you mind if I answer that? With the roading, we've taken a slightly different approach than we have with life risk for residents in a dwelling on the Port Hills. So I know that you're all aware of risk numbers that are used, to say whether a resident is safe in their house or not. No, we don't use numbers like that on the road.
No.
What we do is we do more of a qualitative assessment in terms of this looks like it's going to be a problem. If this rock falls, how catastrophic is the result of that? Will it close the road? How large will the rock be? So it's a slightly different mechanism, which we call qualitative rather than quantitative. So we don't actually put a number on it.
And it's a process that's used around the state highway system, around the whole of the network, around New Zealand. So
All of NZTA's assessments are qualitative in this way. And they are in Australia too, just as a matter of interest. Yep.
Right, so I'll put the resolution. Yanni, do you?
Check in terms of, so it's not going out for consultation, and it's not, and I just want to check, is it possible?
We're not making the final decision, but there is a pamphlet that you see there that's going out.
And basically what it says is we're not seeking any further feedback.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to check.
This is just on the Sumner Road, not the Shag.
No, that's fine,
Yeah.
but can it go to local community boards for
To do a presentation at local community boards? I think that would be great.
before it comes to council? So before it comes to council, I think if we're aware of what the board's views are, it will help keep things going rather than having to come to council, then go back to community boards. So I guess what I'm asking is, from this committee, is it possible for this report to go to community boards next week and then come to council?
It doesn't need to go to community boards for input first. It is just simply, I mean, it didn't even need to come to council. I thought it was really important that that councillors were aware of the substantial work that was going on in the background. The reason that this is not going out for consultation is that there's already been consultation with the major stakeholders, who are all listed there, including Ngāi Tahu and Ngāti Wheke. They've had a really good feedback from all of those. They've got everyone signed off on it. This is a technical solution to getting that part of that network open. So it's not going out for consultation. So it doesn't seem to me that there is an urgency in terms of having the report go to the 2 community boards before we meet next week to sign it off.
Because the thing is, what I don't understand is, if the community have concerns, what is the process for us as elected members to feed those in? We know that the stakeholders have been approached and they've obviously got very clear views, but what we haven't had is a chance for the public or the community to raise any concerns, and we're being asked to endorse a public engagement process and a consultation strategy that doesn't enable the community boards to feed into this process. That's what concerns me.
It's a public engagement phase of communications, and it's just by approving the release of a public information leaflet
Exactly,
and
by
a
telling
media
people
statement.
what we're doing rather
That's right.
than getting
But
that
on
feedback.
this one, well, I mean, on this resolution, the whole point of it is that this is the technical part of the network. So it's a technical decision. It has been consulted with all the major stakeholders. There isn't any input able to be given to this particular decision. But if you want to vote against that, the recommendation, then that's open to you. I'm going to put the. All right, Andrew.
Thank you. I mean, I do note in 4.27 that there are a number of parties noted as parties that have an interest in the project, and the only one on the list there that hasn't been brought into the conversation are the community boards. I mean, I know there was a meeting set up late last year that was cancelled. I really just want to send a message that it would have been good had the community boards been informed of what was happening and given the opportunity for input prior to the report coming to us. I mean, I believe the Littleton community would be very supportive of this and the methodology and everything else. I don't think there would be too many concerns coming out of Littleton. I actually believe that the Littleton community will be really pleased to see this work done, because not only does it address economic issues around the port, it addresses issues around Littleton and Sumner as neighbours, and transport resilience and access resilience issues for Littleton, around current arrangements with the tunnel and Governor's Bay Road and so on as well. The community that I would flag some concerns, that I would expect that we would get some feedback from, would be the communities on the other side of the harbour. And it's great to know that in your planning you've taken into account visual amenity, and I'm also hoping that construction noise and so on would be something else that you'll be taking into account around hours and days of working and that sort of thing. So that's me kind of anticipating what I would expect the Diamond Harbour and Purau community would have to say around this. And I certainly welcome the comments that you've made around exploring whether planting was appropriate or possible, and also the weathering of the new benching and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm broadly supportive of this, and I believe that the communities on my side of the hills would be broadly supportive of this, because it addresses core critical issues for the port. I spoke to Peter Davey last night, and he was really happy to see this on our agenda today. And certainly for the community, it addresses those social issues and resilience issues as well. So with the one reservation that the community boards weren't brought into the conversation earlier, I'm supportive of this today.
Can I just for clarity, the community boards have been involved in the conversation. Before the elections, I took this to the community boards, to the Akaroa Community Board and to the Hagley Ferrymead Community Board. So the options have been before those boards, and I did get the feedback that the benching option, when I relayed that this is our favourite option, that there was support there for the benching option. So the only time the community boards haven't been involved is the time between council staff actually finalising the benching option as our preferred option and bringing the report here today.
Yep. Can I then in that case qualify what I said? It would have been good if some of the content or all of the content of this report had been taken before the community boards for their comment on this proposal.
But you are going to take it back to the community boards.
Yes, that's part
and
of
all
the
we're doing
strategy.
here
Part of the
is
process.
we're endorsing the initiation of the public engagement phase of the communications and consultation strategy. The step one is the release of the public information leaflet and a media statement. That's the public engagement process. There has already been a significant beginning to the stakeholder engagement, which does include the community boards. Okay. So, but...
Really quickly, I
Yep.
just want to say, notwithstanding the requirements under the LGA and the need for consultation, I just don't understand why we're having some of these conversations. Just get on with it.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll do that. So we're going to put 6.1 separately. So 6.1, are you happy to move both and second both of them? Right. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. Carried.